Okay, good. So I think if all is good, we'll get started for today's session over here. Now, first thing first, we'll talk about the news trading aspect, right? So last session we mentioned about it. Okay, so if you take a look at this, my time right now is 9:30. Okay, so this is happening 10 p.m. So it's about 30 minutes into it. Then we'll have the BOC rate statement being released. And right now, the overnight rate is expected to come in as the same as the last month, which is 4.5. So they're expecting a maintain of it. But of course, any kind of surprise element in this part here will gonna give us some volatility in terms of CAD, right? So I'm gonna spend the first part of today's session over here to share with you a little bit about how you can approach news, such as this one here, right? What we call a high impact news, right? An important data release, how you can actually trade it, how you can use this volatility potentially to execute some trades. All right. So first up, of course, you need to pick out currency pairs that are related to the particular news, right? So in this case here, if you're looking at BOC, which is Canadian, then you want to look out for currencies that have Canadian in it. Okay. So of course, currencies that have Canadian in it, we have like dollar CAD, CAD yen, Euro CAD, Pound CAD, Aussie CAD and Kiwi CAD, or even the CAD franc. So what you want to do, of course, you can look at all of them, right? You basically want to scan through. Okay. So what you want to scan out for the first step here, okay, for news trading is you want to look out for charts, okay, that has number one has CAD in it. And you want to look out for charts that are doing a little bit of a consolidation, right? So maybe you want to go down to like 30-minute or even 50-minute time frame, okay? And spot out charts that give you a nice little obvious high and low, right? So in terms of like dollar CAD, we have a very obvious and clear high and low, and the market price right now is ideally trading in between of the range, okay? So that's the first thing, right? The first thing is always identify, do we have a kind of high and low, and is the price somewhere in the middle? Okay, that's ideal. The second thing we want to look into is how far is this width, right? So you can see from the low to the high is about 50 pips, which is ideal because if price is in the middle, then there's about 25 pips to the upside, 25 pips to the downside. That is decent, right? Now, I'll give you an example, which is probably not very decent, is the CAD yen, right? So CAD yen over here, of course, you can take this high, you can take this low. Prices in the middle is coming down a little bit, but what you observe over here is this range is actually not bad right now. Okay, I mean, yes, came down a little bit, so maybe this one is still okay. It's about 50 bits. I'll lock this in first. Just now, just before this little move, it was not ideal. Okay, so this is okay as well. I think about 50 pips. We're in the middle right now, so it's about 25 to the top, 25 to the bottom. Not too bad. Okay. If you take a look at Euro CAD now, this is not good, right? Because you can see here, this is the peak, this is the bottom. The market is basically breaking new highs even before the news is released, right? So these are pairs that you just don't want to spend too much time on, right? You can see the obvious difference between dollar CAD. Okay, very nice little middle, and then the range is not too wide. Versus like Euro CAD, right? The market is basically testing the top, right? So we don't want to focus on Euro CAD, so we just ignore it. And then we look at Pound CAD, it's the same thing, right? Basically, you can see prices at the top, we ignore it, okay? And then, of course, Aussie CAD. I have Aussie CAD here for slightly different reason I'll explain in a while, so I'll just leave that as of now. And then, of course, we have Kiwi CAD. Kiwi CAD, I usually don't like to trade New Zealand when we have a high impact news, simply because New Zealand is less liquid, okay? So I try to avoid that. Of course, you can consider Kiwi franc, but again, it's the same reason why I don't like New Zealand. Okay, I also don't like to look at CAD franc. Why I don't like to look at franc pairs. Okay, so looking at this here, what we've highlighted, of course, we have three, right? Dollar CAD and CAD yen. These are basically looking at a range that is quite ideal. You want it somewhere between about 30 bits range, right? But of course, if you have a yen pairs, you can go up to 50 is fine because yen pairs is more volatile. But you can see dollar CAD here is about 25. That's great. Okay. So these are the two examples, right? So we have the dollar CAD and the CAD yen potentially in the middle, and then we have a pretty nice range for it. Okay. Now this little technique that we're gonna cover, the first technique to write on the news, it's called straddle. Okay. Now some of you may have heard of this strategy name before. It's called straddle. What it does is basically, if I go back to dollar CAD, okay, seems like price is starting to move a little bit, right? What the strategy basically implies is that straddle means we are looking to buy or sell depending on where the market is going to go for a breakout when the news is being released. Okay, so if let's say the news came out and Canadian dollar CAD goes up, okay, then we'll actually execute a buy order at the breakout, and then we'll just look to catch maybe about 15 to 20 pips, and then that's it, right? We exit the trade, we lock in the profits. If let's say the news comes out and dollar CAD drops, then same thing here, we'll look to sell at the bottom, and then we'll just catch 15 to 20 pips, and then we'll get out. All right, so that's called straddle, right? We are not worrying about like which direction it's gonna go. We don't care. But basically, we have a nice little range. The price is in the middle. If it breaks up, we buy. If it breaks down, we sell. That's basically what we call straddle technique. Okay, we don't bother about the direction. We just look for consolidation, wait for the break, catch the volatility, and then that's it. The trade is done. Now, so dollar CAD and CAD yen is basically giving you that potential for a straddle entry technique, right? You put in your breakout and top and bottom. Now, Aussie CAD over here, now it's going up, so it may not be the most ideal anymore. But Aussie CAD, initially, what I wanted to share with you is if this does a little bit of a pattern like that, okay, which we call a crawl, which indicates a clear sense of directional bias that we can focus on. It's something that we can also utilize the news to get involved in the trade. Okay, but of course, right now it seems to be moving up quite strongly. Okay, so can we still look at this? Yes, right. We can still look at it, but this one we will not do a straddle, right? We're not interested in the upside. We're only interested if the news release and price breaks below this. But of course, right now it seems to be going up quite strong. We may want to take Aussie CAD out of it, okay, because it's not a good example already because price is moving right now. Okay, so for news later, I think the best pair to be looking at is going to be dollar CAD. Okay. Another one is CAD yen, right? CAD yen is a little bit on a straddle. Dollar CAD is a little bit on a straddle, but dollar CAD you can also apply a kind of like directional bias to it. Okay, when I mean directional bias means you pick a direction that you think there's a higher chance of winning. This pattern here is a potential reversal pattern, right? So if you ask me to pick for dollar CAD, beyond news trading itself, right? I mean, on the higher time frame, maybe on a H4 on the hourly, there's a good chance this would probably pop back up. Okay, maybe coming back to this zone here. So what we can do is we also can combine our typical analysis plus the news for a potential catalyst for us to trigger a trade. Okay, so straddle is specifically for news. Okay, this other way, the other technique over here is we pick a direction. In this case, if let's say I'm interested in the buy, then I'll be only looking at a breakout buy when the news release. And if let's say the news release and dollar CAD keeps falling, then I'm not interested in it. I'm not going to take a trade, right? So there's a slight difference to it because if I have a clear sense of direction, I'll be utilizing, kind of like a higher time frame to understand, okay, where can potentially this go? So if let's say on the higher time frame, we can potentially see dollar CAD maybe come back towards like 1.3515, then I'll utilize the news to get involved in the buy, but I won't take profit with just 15 to 20 pips, right? I will be potentially riding, a breakout at 1.3430. Sorry, this is a bit higher time frame, right? If I break out around, 1.3430, I can maybe ride it to 1.35 somewhere there, right? So that's like a good 100 plus pips instead of just 15 pips. So there are different ways, of course, you can kind of combine it with news trading, but the simplest form of all is just look at a tight consolidation, trade a break, catch 15 to 20 pips, right? So if I put in some example over here, right? If you wait for the break here, if you're going to catch about 15 pips, it's just somewhere there. It's still within that. It's still pretty decent. If you're going to catch the breakout of this, Okay, 15 pips is somewhere there, right? So there's something you can set it up. In terms of the yen pairs, of course, you can do that as well, right? If you break out, you can catch maybe about 15, somewhere there, right? Back at this high. And if you look at a sell at the break, you can catch a 15 pips, which is just about there, right? Back at this low. Okay, of course, your stop over here, you can just easily put, 15 pips as well. If you want a 1:1 kind of risk to reward ratio, but ideally what's going to happen is you want a surprise element in the market just basically go through and, in the next, when the news release, right, in the next 1 or 2 minutes, it hits your target and you get out of it. Okay, so that's the whole idea about news trading, right? You don't want to be hanging on to that trade too long because you're basically catching that short-term volatility. Okay, so what I'm going to do over here is I'll probably also set up a trade over here, okay, to cover a little bit with you guys as well. Okay, so in terms of like dollar CAD, right? So how you can actually set it up. Again, we have this area here, which is around 3,430. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, I can look at it from 3,430 to the bottom here, which is about 50 pips, right? Of course, what we then want to do is to very quickly calculate our position sizing, right? So it's part of risk management. So if today, for example, okay, this account is about 3,000. So I'm just going to key in 2,000 just to be a little bit more conservative in a way, right? And let's say we reach 2% of it with a stop loss of 50 pips range, and 3,420, right? Yeah, 3,420, 3,430 is our entry price for dollar CAD. We just key that in. We can basically trade 0.1 lot based on this setting, right? And I'm basically risking $40 on this trade. That's the example of it. Okay, so basically what I can set out on this is 0.1. Okay, a breakout trade at 1.3430. Okay, and then we'll place that. Yeah, that's great. Okay, and then what will happen over here is I'm not using a hard stop loss, okay, but I'm using a technique called the hedge. What it means is that basically if the market breaks above, okay, and maybe it did not really go very far, and from there on it decides to come back down, and it breaks this low, then what I'm going to do over here is when this trade is active, I'll put in the sell stop, which means if the market breaks and enter a buy and then it comes back down here, I'll hedge it. So I have a buy and a sell, and I'll lock in the drawdown, and that will just resolve the trade eventually. Okay, it's a little bit more advanced in the technique called hedging. Okay, maybe later after the news, I'll share a little bit more depending on how it plays out. And then you get a better idea and understanding of what it is. Okay, but this is how we set it up. I think quite straightforward. Again, I'm speaking a little bit fast right now. It's simply because we do have the news upcoming in about 15 minutes, right? So I also want to make sure that you guys have sufficient time to go and prepare a little bit for those of you who are interested in it. Okay, CAD yen, I think it's something that you can consider as well. Okay, CAD yen. Okay, on the lowest scale, that's the range, right? The top to the bottom is about 50 pips. Yeah, so this is how we can look into it. In terms of dollar CAD over here, for targets, right? This one here, I'm actually looking at maybe a bigger move back up. Potentially, the target is around 1.35, as I mentioned just now. Okay, so this is about 1.35, 3510, right? So somewhere there. Right, so it's actually more than it's definitely more than 15 to 20, right? So this one here, I'm looking at combining a news trade with a swing, and then what I'm going to do with CAD yen over here is I'm going to utilize a straddle. Okay, so what we have is this is the breakout point. Okay, at the buy side, and then this is the sell side, right? So this range here is about 50. Okay, So what I can set out over here is I'm probably not going to set a 50 pips risk, right? I'm probably going to set maybe about the 30. Okay, so I'll calculate my sizing based on that, right? So if this is going to be like 30 bits, cat yen, sorry, missed my cat yen. Okay, then of course you need to key in your dollar yen price point. Okay, so dollar yen price point right now, 139.25. Okay, so I basically can trade about 0.18 lots, right? Based on $40 of risk. Okay. So what I can do over here is I can key in 0.18. Okay, so I'll have a buy stop here at 104.20. Okay, and then I have a sell stop order at 103.65, right? Just round down a little bit to give you a little bit, right? So maybe that, yeah, maybe I'll just do like push up a little bit, right? Just nice of the break. Sorry, I'll just remove the green line over here so that it's not blocking our order. Okay, but basically that's the breakout point. Okay, and that's the sell stop, right? So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna put in about a 15 pips, right? So 104.3536. That's basically what our target is gonna be. If it goes up, break, ideally gonna take profit out of that. So this one here, 15 is 5.4, right? Okay, so that's how we're gonna play it out on the straddle of this. Okay, and then the other one on dollar CAD, I'm just basically playing out in terms of a longer term. Okay, combining if let's say the news really go up, dollar CAD really starts to move higher, we'll get involved in this, and then ideally we're gonna take profit from there. Maybe not today, but it may take maybe a couple of days if let's say this really move in the direction that we want. Okay, so yeah, so we just wait, right? So again, this technique here, if you're very familiar with it, you don't need a long time to set things up, right? So you can see from the start, when I start explaining to all the way until here, it can take about like 15-20 minutes. Okay, but of course we have a lot of explanation, right? You don't want to set this up too early as well, because you can see the market is basically moving, right? So you want to really set up your straddle as close as the news is gonna get, simply because we want to ideally see this still in the middle of the two range, so you kind of get an equal chance, right, of breaking up and breaking down. And you want to get involved in the trade only when the news is released, right? You don't want to get involved in the trade before the news. Okay, so you want to set this up as close as possible to the news and not before it. Okay, so usually if you're new, maybe about 15 minutes prior to the news, you can look at it, set things up, and then just wait for the news to release and monitor on that. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is we still have about 10 minutes before the news release. Just going to give you guys a bit of time to set things up, maybe on your own trading as well, if you're interested in that, right? So for me personally, I'm looking at dollar CAD and CAD yen. I think that's the two better ones, right? I mean, some of these are still moving, like Euro CAD seems to be coming back a little bit. Okay, Pound CAD seems to be coming back as well, which, if the conditions are right, you can still, of course, look into it. Yeah, there's a divergence on this. So Aussie CAD may be something interesting as well. Let me just open up that too. Okay. So Aussie CAD is basically, I would consider Aussie CAD as well, right? Basically this range here is give it about 25, right? So we'll look at that. so this is 1.3. It's about 0.21. This is about 8955, right? Just put 8955. Okay, so Aussie CAD and dollar CAD, basically, I'm having a clear sense of direction. Okay, and one of this here, I'm actually looking to sell the CAD, right? So dollar CAD buy means we're selling the CAD. Aussie CAD sell means we're buying the CAD, right? So ideally, one of this should trigger and the other wouldn't. Okay, because if CAD strengthens, then we'll be involved in the Aussie CAD sell. If CAD weakens, then we're involved in the dollar CAD buy. Okay, this two here, I'm looking at a swing style of it. Okay, so if I can't pull a FIPS, if I'm a little bit more conservative in my target, it will probably be around 8915. Okay, and again, this one here, I'll use a a hedging technique, which means if price came down, did not hit my target, and decides to after that go back up and break this high, I'll look to buy here so that we'll hedge out the buy and sell. Okay, to kind of lock in that losses, right, so that your loss don't get magnified. Okay. Cool. Okay, so yeah, I'm seeing some question, but let me just make sure everything is there. Yeah, so we get about like 8 minutes, right? So I see Dio here is asking when we set our TP at 15 pips distance and sometimes pending orders during news get filled after 20 pips move, is it not a disadvantage? Now, the idea here is you can see, right, if let's say the news release, it needs to take a good like trendy pips move to get us in, and then it needs to move another 15 pips to hit our target. So basically from where it is right now, roughly, okay, it needs to move about 40 to 50 pips in order for us to resolve and get out of the buy trade in profit. Or similarly here, it needs to drop about 40 to 50 pips for us to make a sell profit. Okay, so this is the part where why I say you don't want this range to be too far, and you want ideally the price in the middle of the range, is because you want to make sure when it breaks, it still has something left for it to move. Okay. And of course, if there's no surprise element, we're not going to get involved in the trade, right? So for example, if the news later comes out and then we just basically hover around, and we don't get a very clear sense of a direction immediately, we may want to just remove that. Okay. So yeah, so that's the whole idea of it, right? You don't want it to be too small, you don't want it to be too far. Such that even after we move, from here, maybe move about 20 plus pips, you still have some room, and I would say some fuel, some energy, right, for the price to continue moving in the direction and then hit us out at target, and then maybe by then it's exhausted and then it reverts, right? So you want to get out. That's why I say you just want to catch that short-term move, right? Yeah, this is basically still pushing up, right? But we'll see, okay, we'll see. If this doesn't come down and then just keeps going, then nothing to worry about, right? Because we'll not get triggered in a sell if this doesn't come back down. Okay, so maybe I'll reduce this lot size a bit because we are pushing it down a little bit, right? Initially it was here. We kind of calculated it's about 20. Let me just put that in 25. Maybe we calculate that again. Okay. Just take this. Yeah, so it's about 2-1. Yeah. Just take about 25, 30. Then we just take a 0.2 lot, right? Okay, so that would be 0.8955. Right. And the target here is 8915. All right, so we just see how it goes. 5 minutes to the news. go. Okay, so we're seeing some question here as well, but I think maybe we'll just wait for the news to be released and I'll answer them. Okay, so that for those of you who are doing the news trade, you can stay focused while the news is being released, right? And I'll just talk a little bit about after it release, how we're going to manage it, okay, if we can't get any move from here on. So yeah, I'm seeing some of the questions that you guys have, like, best strategy for Go, and then I think mine here has a couple of parts of the question, right? So we'll actually talk about that after the news release. Okay, so if you look at Forex Factory over here, okay, yeah, we just basically wait for that to release, right? So it's about 3 minutes in. All right, so for those of you interested to also, have trades and things like that, you can take this time to set things up on your side, right? And then we'll basically just wait for the news to release and see if we can get kind of like a move. Okay, ideally, of course, we want to have some kind of like impulsive move, right? We want to see a move that is strong. Okay, if it's not strong, then the chances of the trade winning may not be very, very high. Okay, you also need to factor in that the possibility of, what we call a whipsaw, right? It can just goes up, then maybe doesn't touch your stops and then just come back down. Sorry, it doesn't touch your target and then just come back down. And then, you need to also understand that there's this possibility. Okay, we call this whipsaw. So we need to just be careful on that, right? So that's why you need to calculate your position sizing to always ensure that your total risk is fine. Like what I did here is a quick calculation, 2% of this, 2% of this, and 2% of this. Maximum running risk is about 6%, but this is going up. Probably Aussie cat may not be ideal anyway, right? Yeah, but we'll just keep it there and see how it goes, right? Okay, so we'll just wait for the news. I think about another 2 minutes, 1.5, right? And then we'll see how it goes from the price point perspective after that. Right. I think Aussie is strengthening quite a bit, right? So the cat is not really the one that's moving much as of now. I think it's the Aussie. Okay, but let's see. Okay, I think we are about a minute in. Whoops. Right. Okay. Good. So we'll see how it goes. If there is a good, nice move, ideally we should get out of the trade profitably in like a minute or two. If there is a major surprise element, right, it should be quite clear and straightforward on that. Okay, good. So we're in the buy. We'll cancel the sell, and we should get out in the buy in a profit, right? That's it. So this is coming down. So this one here, we'll just cancel the pending order for dollar CAD, and we'll write on Aussie CAD over here. Okay, so just probably look to exit this a little bit there. My hedge position is going to go above this, so that would be 8,990. Okay, so this one here, we're going to put it by limit, sorry, by stop, 8,990. Yeah. So that's basically what we call a hedge, right? I'm in the sell. If this doesn't go down and it just continue to go back up, breaks that high, I'll basically get involved in a buy. So I've basically hedged out the buy and sell. So I lock in my drawdown to control my risk. Okay. But this one here is an easy win, right? I'll show you that. Okay, so easy win on, sorry, Cat Yen, right? Easy win. Okay. Yeah, so that's a 15 pips. Actually, slightly less than that, right? It's a 13 pips kind of win, okay, because of some slippages and things, but which is common, right? I mean, in news environment, it's just common that that happens. So Cat Yen, we're done. I'll close this chart off. Okay, so you can see, right, very, very straightforward and simple thing. That's what we want. Fast move, get out within like 1 minute. This one's taking a little bit of time. But ideally, it should continue down a little bit more. Yeah, we get a surprise high, right? So that's why we saw CAT strengthening. Okay. So this one should continue to drop down a little bit more. So that's about 30 pips. I'll really look at Aussie CAT from a larger time frame perspective and see if we can catch a bigger move from there. Okay. Because this one I'm actually quite interested in the sell side anyway, right? So I would say we may look at about 8890, right? I'll take a bigger, because I don't want to cut myself too short, right? Probably just want to look at this at 88, somewhere there. Okay. Probably 8890 lah. Right, 8890. So I can catch quite a nice little move here, about 50 to 60 pips. Okay, so this one here, the idea is, of course, if this continue to come down even before hitting target, if we can get a good somewhere around like 20, 30 pips range of profit, I'll just add in a stop loss at break even, okay, and then I'll take away that buy stop, okay, because then the risk would be risk free, right, from there on. Good. Yeah, so for those of you who managed to ride on the Cat Yen trade, you know, hopefully that's something that you can also benefit from. Okay, I've canceled the buy on the dollar cat, right? I mean, if you actually sold this on a straddle, you're also making some decent profits anyway, right? But because I was just interested in the buy, right? Versus the cat yen I'm using the straddle. So this one here I'm just using the buy. We did not get filled in the buy, so no worries on that. We just cancel it because this basically just keeps going down, and then we just write on Aussie Cat and see if we can write this down, right? So that's basically about it.